Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to extol the joyous necessity of incompetence. And I came to this topic by way of you folks. Thank you for inspiring me. As a result of my recent review of the Long Long Sanson abomination that came out. And, I was observing with a certain amount of glee and maybe a little bit of alarm the enormous pile-on top of poor old Mr. Long by most people who, there were a couple naysayers, a couple ya-sayers actually, or yes-sayers, people who, took me to task for being mean, and who also took all of you to task for wanting to jump on all over him and talk about how much he sucks and all that. And it's very funny. Among the nasty accusatory people were some who said that I just don't understand him and I've always been mean to him, which isn't true at all, actually. I start out respecting everybody, and I grant him props for being a technically very gifted pianist, but that doesn't mean that every recording he makes is good or that he's suitable for all repertoire. And as time has gone on, he's gotten less suitable for more repertoire. It's a shame. But that wasn't my point. My point was the glee, the sheer enjoyment everyone got out of just trashing the boy, the man, actually. I got enjoyment doing that review. We all do. We all do. Incompetence is so important, or what we claim to be incompetence, because in the world of classical music, true incompetence is very, very rare. That is that someone is not adequate to the task, technically. Most classical artists are really technically terrific, and they can do anything. So our view of incompetence is going to be a much more subjective, sort of taste-based definition. It's not going to be, an objective, fact-based definition. And that's okay too, because that's a lot of fun. And I remember this was driven home to me. It was driven home to me when I was working for a real estate development company. And I remember this very vividly. We had a project which was a disaster. It was absolutely a disaster. We took it over from another developer who had a huge fight with their contractor. And the contractor had sabotaged the project. They poured concrete in the pipes and they ripped everything apart. It was just a mess. So we needed to get a really top-notch construction company and construction manager to fix the thing and to finish building it after we got it. It was a foreclosure from the bank and all this stuff. It was kind of fun, very interesting. That's why I liked my other job. It was fascinating. But this was about 25 years ago now. But anyway, so we had this property and we hired really the best in the business, and they proceeded to make a total mess of everything they had to do. They made it worse if possible. It was unbelievable. And we were shocked. And I was talking to one of the consultants we worked for, a construction estimator who was a Scotsman. I can say Scotsman, right? I'm not saying he's Scotch. We had this discussion too recently. He's Scottish in connection with the Scottish Symphony. He's not Scotch. He's Scottish and a Scotsman. And just a terrific guy, a wonderful guy who really enjoyed his work. He really did. And I was talking to him at one point because I handled the financial aspects of things. I was, I'm an ex-banker and whatnot. And so, I was saying to him, this is just awful. And he just had this grin on his face. He was like, yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Oh, my God. He said, but, I just don't get it. They're supposed to be top-notch people, like the best in their field. Isn't it just horrible that they're making such a disaster of this thing? And he just looked at me and he grinned and he said, well, no, it just makes me feel so adequate. And I thought about that. Oh, that was one of those life lesson chats. You know what I mean? Yes, I got it. He was necessary. He made a living. He felt good. Well, we do too, don't we? I know this is nothing new. Maybe all of this is obvious, but it was just this recent, a long pile up, sort of pile on, just raise the issue in my mind again. We all want to feel adequate. Not all of us are going to be geniuses. Not all of us are going to be great. We don't need greatness. We need satisfaction. Just a measure of satisfaction, a measure of our own adequacy as listeners, as music lovers, as whatever collectors, whatever our shtick happens to be, right? And so in this particular case, with poor old Long Long, we were able to say to ourselves, wait a minute, we've heard this thing, we've heard other things, we've done our homework, we can make a judgment that's an informed judgment, that's based on knowledge of piano players from the past century who've been on record, of this particular repertoire, of sonic considerations and all that. We make our judgment. And that judgment makes us feel good. And if everything that we listen to were fabulous, we would never be able to make those kinds of judgments. We would just sit here feeling terribly inferior, right? I mean, we're taught by the classical music industry that we're supposed to be humble little peons, little consumers who worship at the shrine of great art and culture. And that's what we're supposed to do, mindlessly go, the classics. And we do that. I mean, we do that with great composers. We do it with Bach, most of all, probably, and others of that ilk, where a lot of us just want to sit back and say, no, we should never criticize, or we shouldn't judge, or we shouldn't. But with artists, with performers, well, of course, they're recreative artists, and we get to jump in there and have a good time with them when it comes to whether or not we feel that they're adequate or great or whatever. And if they weren't bad, if there weren't people who we could really determine do a lousy job for whatever reason, half of the fun would go out of this. Isn't that true? I mean, just admit it. Let's be honest about it, right? Especially if you're going to be listening to multiple recordings of the same piece over and over and over again. I mean, you've got millions of recordings of these things, and you're going to be making comparisons. And because you're going to be making comparisons, so much of the joy of the repetition and of learning these works is learning them so we know what they sound like, so we have opinions that we can express, and we can go after people. And I frankly think that the people who don't understand that are, first of all, missing a great deal of what goes into the joy of listening to classical music. It's the ability to really participate. I mean, personally participate in making judgments, in being part of what we all agree is the highest and best manifestation of Western civilization and culture. And isn't it fun to be a part of that? It really is. So, part of this is just making this obvious point, I know, but part of it also is telling, those of you who object sometimes to the hostility and the glee with which we, like to stomp on certain artists and whatnot, just lighten up and relax. It's all in good, clean fun. It really is. I mean, it's part of the joy that people get in jumping on me and jumping on critics and hating particular critics. And I mean, there's a whole little bunch of newsgroup people where, the hate Hurwitz people because they despise me. And, hey, that's their right. It's their right. And it's okay because they have fun. They're having a good time. And that's what we're all doing, isn't it? Everyone's just in it the performers are trying to make a living, and the rest of us are they're trying to make a living by asking us to support them, and our support is not given unconditionally, nor should it be. Conditions abound. And one of the best aspects of giving that support is that when we do it, it makes us feel worthy and adequate. So I welcome all of my adequate friends, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. I know I'm blathering, but it was just such an enjoyable bout of orneriness from everybody, and I think we did our damn jobs, and I hope that we all feel good about it. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.